I'm Andrew Patterson from interest.co.nz. Welcome to another in our business update series. Today I'm with Mike Carden, the founder of Sonar6. Welcome, Mike.
Hi. Hey, Andrew.
So, Mike, just tell us a little bit about the business, how it got started, what you actually do.
I think if anything, I was kind of like the victim of HR. I worked for Hewlett-Packard, which is, of course, a large global operation. They had a big HR department, and they'd send us performance reviews to do as a manager sort of once a year, and it kind of felt like the edict of some distant group that we only heard from once a year. And I guess that we were looking at building a product, and that seemed like a space that was ripe for some disruption.
Of course, you were originally trained in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? You leave school and try and find your way in the world. And I'm not sure how I kind of, I started in computer science, I guess, because I was interested in computers, and I kind of wound my way through university and ended up majoring in AI. But I think as soon as I left university, I noticed all the people in sales and marketing seemed to be driving nicer cars, so I kind of went down that route, and I suppose I spent most of my career in consumer marketing more than anything.
And I suppose kind of IT people that work in that space never have a great relationship with things like performance reviews. Was that your experience?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think that when we started looking at the space initially, we kind of did the math on it, and we figured out that there was probably something like 1 billion people in the world who do some kind of annual performance review. They have some kind of annual performance review that they're involved in. So that's 1 billion people, and when you talk to virtually any of those people, they'll all tell you that they're dissatisfied with it. You go, I do performance reviews, yes we do them, do you like them? Go, oh no, they're rubbish, right? And so I don't think it's actually necessarily specific to IT. I think that like most people out there actually have some kind of innate dissatisfaction with the performance review process, and that's what we went out to try and fix. We said there's 1 billion people out there, they're all dissatisfied. If you can kind of monetize that to $20 per person per year, you've got a $20 billion total available market. So it sounds kind of dull, doesn't it? Performance reviews online, but actually when you do the maths of it, it's actually very, very exciting.
What is it about the software that makes it attractive to clients?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Actually, I mean, it's probably easier to take something that is unappealing and completely fix it than it is to kind of polish something, if you know what I mean. And so, look, the way we looked at it is we went and talked to lots and lots of customers, and we, I guess, discovered that most people doing performance reviews just didn't think that they were useful. So if you were a manager or an employee, you'd go, hey, I do this performance review, but it's not really useful to me. It might be useful to the HR department or someone else, but I don't find it useful to me. And so a lot of what we went and did was just try to make it useful for employees and managers. And if you get that piece right, and you build the right kind of data model behind that, then you can kind of collect the information easily and then roll that up and provide some kind of a helicopter view for HR and management of what's happening in their organisation. So I think it was actually surprisingly simple to fix.
So it was about getting the engagement and the buy-in, I'm thinking.
Yeah, look, I think that one of the things we said quite early on is that we want to kind of make HR cool. And it is one of those things where HR doesn't really get the opportunity to do something cool in the business very often.
Perhaps by the marketing people.
Well, that's true, right? Isn't it? And so if you can make the HR person look cool, you can give them the kind of artifacts to describe what's going on in their business, so they can sit kind of at the management meeting and say, hey, this is what's happening with our people, and be informed. And at the same time, you've got employees and managers going like, hey, that new process that was rolled out by HR seems useful. I think that was. It started a kind of groundswell. And HR is great because HR is a real community. HR people talk to other HR people, and that's how this business was built.
And when you sat down to design this, what was it about really making it a little bit quirky, a little bit different, to actually get that sense of engagement?
Look, I think the main thing we did is we tried to learn from the kind of software that everyone uses every day. So if you look at typical enterprise software, it's kind of dull and hard to interact with and so on. You kind of fill out a form and you hit submit, and then maybe something happens. Whereas as people, as kind of consumers, we're trained by things like Facebook and all these other kind of software we interact with. We're trained to expect instantaneous gratification. So if I post something on my wall in Facebook, I kind of expect that someone's going to reply to it. I expect there to be some kind of response, and I get trained to that. Whereas most kind of enterprise systems, like I say, you kind of fill out a form, and it goes nowhere. And so a lot of what we did was just take the kind of simple cues that people are used to from consumer software, particularly social media, and then just apply that into the world of performance.
You operate in I guess what we'd call the SME space, under 1,000 employees, and that's where you spotted the gap in the market, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When we looked at this market, we've been in this business for 6 years. When we looked at it, we found that in the 5,000 or 10,000 person plus organisation space, there's a lot of competitors, and in the kind of sub 500, sub 1,000 person space, there was a lot less competitors. And I guess that we tried to work out why that was, and I think what we discovered was that actually it's a difficult space to play in, because in that smaller business you've got lots of stuff going on, you've got lots of stuff you could spend your money on, you've got lots of distractions, so it's quite hard to acquire customers in that space. And then typically smaller businesses wouldn't stay with the software for as long, so kind of retention was a struggle. And so we said, well, we've got a space that's harder to play in, but it's got less competitors. What do we do? And I guess we ended up trying to build a business that was native to that small medium business space, and that's been hugely successful, because we've been able to do things differently. We've been able to say, okay, what does a 300 person company actually really want? And by being more targeted and more focused, that's given us a lot more traction. At the same time, that's a massive market. Most people work in smaller businesses. That's just the reality of it.
I think you have around 375 clients. Most of them, though, are in the Northern Hemisphere. So why are we not seeing the take-up in New Zealand, do you think?
Well, look, we do have a lot of clients in New Zealand as well. And I think, look, our numbers now, I mean, we're pushing close to 500 customers now. I mean, we just really have huge momentum. And New Zealand is actually one of the places where we're adding customers the fastest now. So I think New Zealand is starting to catch up. I think what we found is that in the US, when we started, probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there was a lot more existing momentum for performance management. And so we were typically replacing a poor quality system that they already had. Whereas in New Zealand, you had customers coming, hey, we're not doing anything for performance management, can we buy your system? And that's a bit of a slower sell, to be honest. That's really changed now. I think we're kind of getting into the situation where virtually all businesses in New Zealand have some kind of performance management process. And so I think that the markets just work at slightly different speeds. And so I think that last month New Zealand would have represented, certainly it was nowhere near as large as our US number, but it probably represented something like 20%, which is impressive.
And of course, you've seen some pretty spectacular growth over the last couple of years, particularly. And I guess you've got that situation at the moment where employers are very conscious about getting maximum value out of employees. So maybe the GFC is actually playing to your advantage.
Yeah, look, I think that it really interests me. I think that we started this business and we went straight into the GFC, straight into the financial crisis. And I remember reading stuff at the time that said, hey, when HR at the time of in tough times, you've got to focus on a handful of things. You've got to focus on making sure that you reward staff who are doing well. You've got to focus on making sure you deal with underperformance really quickly. You've got to focus on making sure that people have really clear goals of what they're trying to achieve. Now, it kind of made me laugh, because surely that should be the function of HR, regardless of whether there's a financial crisis or not, right? That should be the function of how you manage people in business. But what it did mean is that I guess that a shift really happened, which said, hey, look, rather than just kind of expanding our workforce and so on, how do we make sure we're getting great productivity out of our workforce? And that's been, I think, if you look at a policy level, that's actually been something that's covered even a government in New Zealand. We really are trying to increase the productivity of businesses in this country. And one of the best ways of increasing productivity is making sure that people understand what they're supposed to be doing and how they're going to be measured on whether they do well or not.
So you've grown quickly. You're still recruiting staff?
Yeah, look, our biggest challenge is finding staff at the moment. I mean, we've got a great team of people here. We want to find more great people, and so we're staff as fast as we can find them really at the moment, particularly in the development space. Here in our office in Auckland, also in marketing, but certainly we're adding salespeople around the world. So we just employed our first salesperson in Tel Aviv. Yesterday, in fact, we have more people working in that Europe market and Middle East market. We're adding people in Australia, the US. I guess that we've built something we know is scalable, and we're investing heavily to make sure we get as many customers on board as we can.
So you can really see a horizon of fairly unlimited growth from this point.
Yeah, look, like I said, we're sitting at about 500 clients, and 500 clients is great. We've got about 100,000 users, but I mean, come on, there's literally millions of people. Millions and millions of people who work in the kind of businesses that we target, and there's tens of thousands of applicable companies. So certainly we've got plenty of room to grow.
So despite all that growth, you did decide to sell in March this year. What was the rationale behind the decision to sell?
Well, I guess that those things are kind of complex decisions. Actually, ultimately you're trying to meet the objectives of a shareholder group that has different priorities. But that said, I think that in our space, in the space of human resources, software as a service, the market just got superheated. So there was a lot of acquisition going on. So some of our largest competitors, SuccessFactors was acquired by SAP, Taleo was acquired by Oracle. Suddenly, we saw businesses being valued at very high multiples. So I guess that when that happens, the other thing that happens is lots of money pours into the market. So the VCs start backing lots of startups because they go, hey, this is a hot category. And so I guess between those two things, it really leaves you with only two options. You can either take on board a lot more money to compete in a more competitive market, or you can take advantage of the consolidation taking place and be acquired. You can't sit there and do nothing. That is definitely true. So I think that we had a number of suitors. We were certainly very much the hottest property in this space, and so we took that opportunity, and it gives us the opportunity to continue growing with now a different owner who's certainly got probably more confidence in our business than we even had ourselves. They're investing very, very heavily.
You didn't think of an IPO?
I think it's very, very hard to get an IPO away these days. I really do. I mean, there has been exceptions to that. Xero is a good exception in New Zealand, but I think that it's tough to get an IPO away. It costs a lot, and I think that you kind of have to you have to reach quite a large size. Like there's a fundamental challenge there too, and just in the way that SaaS businesses are understood. So a software as a service business, a SaaS business, a subscription business like this, we reinvest every piece of money we can into customer acquisition because we know that over time those customers make us lots of money. Customers stay for us on average 7 years, and so we know what happens when we get a customer, we'll make money out of them over time. What that means is to build value in these kind of businesses, you actually put all of your available money into customer acquisition, which means that you push off making profits sometime into the future. The share markets in the US definitely understand that. If I look at a lot of the commentary around some of the SaaS businesses in New Zealand that have listed, I certainly see that the markets here are only just starting to come to grips with that conceptually.
So where to from here? You're owned now by an American owner, and how's that changed the dynamics of the business?
Well, the main thing is it hasn't really changed much at all. I mean, we're still headquartered here in New Zealand. They very much, Cornerstone On Demand very much wanted to keep this business intact. They recognised that keeping it intact was the best way to actually kind of capitalise on its capability. And so I think from that perspective, we are 90% nothing has changed. The bit that has changed is that new owners have brought more investment basically, and so we are adding staff, we are growing, we're being much more aggressive in our marketing and so on and so forth. And so I think that there's only kind of positive change. There's a lot of new faces around the building already.
You don't think there's a risk that they shut you down here and move you up to Silicon Valley?
I think it's very, very unlikely. I mean, Silicon Valley particularly because they're a Santa Monica-based company, so they're an LA company, and that makes them a little different than the traditional Silicon Valley companies. I think that they actually have quite a different kind of culture, and they have a very global culture. So, certainly Cornerstone has offices in countries around the world. So they're not as US centric as a lot of those kind of Silicon Valley competitors that we have are. Is that a risk? I don't think it's a risk at all, to be honest. I think that it's that the CEO of Cornerstone, Adam Miller, was very, very candid, and he said that they'd tried to get into the SMB space themselves and been unsuccessful. And so from that perspective, they made an acquisition. They don't make acquisitions. We're the first one they've ever made, the only one they've ever made. And his goal with that acquisition was to say, okay, I think that we need to do things differently, so we need to keep it intact. And part of the reason that he was comfortable with most of our research and development and marketing sitting here in Auckland, New Zealand, kind of 6,000 miles away, was because he actually, I guess they like the idea that it's a separate business.
So where could you take this business in the future? What sort of goals have you set yourself for the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, look, we have very, very aggressive growth goals. I mean, they're extraordinary. I mean, I look at the numbers, and we have kind of gone from we add as many customers in a week now as we used to add in a year only 4 years ago, right? So you're in and that doesn't abate. We certainly do continue to grow at that rate. And so look, I think that there's probably two things that we're focused on. One is we want to accelerate the roadmap, so we want to bring more features out to cover more customer requirements more quickly. And so we're rapidly investing in our R&D engine, and it's one of the most satisfying things about building a product is you can invest in R&D. And then the second thing is that we're trying to acquire customers and look after those customers and hold on to them. And so we're building out our sales force, we're building out our marketing, we're building out our customer support and implementation teams. So really it's pretty simple. We're trying to build a better and better product, and we're trying to get that out to more and more users.
And finally, Mike, best bit of advice for somebody with a technology startup thinking of following in your wake of your success, what should they be focusing on?
Oh, look, my big piece of advice is that you can't steer a ship that's not moving. I talk to people all the time who go, look, I really want to start a business, but I just haven't thought of the idea yet. And candidly, when we started this business and I got together with Mark Hellier and then later with John Holt, we didn't really know what we were going to build. We knew we were going to build something in HR, but it wasn't until we started building it and we started kind of like getting feedback from customers and so on that we really managed to hone in on the fact that this performance management piece was gold. And so I think that like I said, you can't steer a ship that's not moving. Sometimes you just have to jump in there and kind of have momentum, and the only thing you can rely on is your own self-confidence.